Hi, Deborah Callahan here. Today I'm going to be speaking with Cheri Baumann from Queensland, Australia. Cheri is an intuitive healer and spiritual mentor. Welcome, Cheri.
Thanks, Deborah.
So today, Cheri and I are going to be talking about how to follow your soul's urging even when it doesn't make sense. I thought we would start with how you became an intuitive healer, your awakening, which to me was a fun story. So could you share that with us?
Sure, I'd love to. So it's interesting because I think for all of us, we can look back and recognize that there were probably instances in our life where we did hear or we were aware of spirit, but it sort of didn't click. And for me, the day that it clicked was my husband and I were walking along the beach. So we grew up in a place called the Gold Coast. It's a beautiful beach place, and we're sort of beach bums. And we spent the morning at the beach, and we'd walked a fair distance along the beach. We'd gone across some soft sand, up some steps to our car. And my husband turned to me and said, "Where are the car keys?" And I said, "What do you mean? You've got them." And he goes, "No, I don't." And then I said, "Well, you put them in your flippers," because he'd been body surfing. And he looked down at the flippers and he'd walked the whole distance with them tipped upside down. So we thought, okay, we'll try and go over our steps again. So we went down the steps, across this soft sand and down an embankment because there'd been some erosion. And suddenly I heard this voice say to me, "Dig here and you will find them." So I just very obediently got down on my knees and started digging. And my husband turned to me and said, he did swear, I won't say what he said, but he said, "What in the beep are you doing?" And I said, "Well, this voice told me to dig here and I'll find the keys." And he said, "But we didn't even go down here." And I said, "How do you know?" Because there was just footprints everywhere. He said, "I reckon we went down over here," which was, a short distance away. So I went, "Oh, okay." So I went over and I started digging and I thought, no, the voice told me back there. Well, I must have dug about that deep and there were the keys. And then he swore again. And it must have been that as we walked, we've dropped them. And as we've walked up, sand's gone down and it was lunchtime. So people were leaving the beach to go home for lunch. So quite a few people must have walked up and just walked down all this sand onto them. And so from there, I went to a friend. Well, she was a kinesiologist / psychic. And I told her the story. And she said to me, "Well, hold on a minute." So she went and got some photos out of a drawer. And she said, "Tell me what the voice tells you about these photos." I told her what they said. And she said, "Well, you're 100% accurate. You need to go home and practice." So that's what I did. I started practicing with a few friends. They recommended other people, all word of mouth. The next thing, I'm seeing 20 to 30 people a week. So even people were emailing me and I was doing distance work. So it was really just a matter of trusting the voice and working from my heart. Obviously, it was the time for me to start working and they needed something to wake me up and say, "Come on, give me a kick up the backside and get going."
So I have so many questions about that. Did you trust that inner voice from the moment you found the keys on the beach?
Absolutely. And when I think back with another story between my husband and I did hear the voice then, I just totally trusted it. I didn't question it. And I always just had the faith that if I continued to totally trust, I suppose, and work with, I didn't even know who I was talking to. I just trusted them 100%. And that was it. I just knew that I should trust them. I don't know, it's very hard to describe, but it was just like the information came really fast, like channeling. They also did healing. So they were removing energy and rebalancing and doing all of that and telling me what they were doing as they were doing it. So I had no reason not to trust them. I had no reason to doubt them.
Well, I love your story so much because I think that's a story that everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
Things like that happen to many of us, but it doesn't click the way that it did for you.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about it.
A lot of people, you read books and they've had this gift since they were a little person.
Mhm.
And for me, I was 41 when that happened. I think over the time I had little impromptus about it and I didn't take any notice. I didn't have the awareness of what I was hearing. I just trusted it, but I didn't
Wow.
do anything with it.
So how did you discover that you were a healer?
What they told me they were doing.
Oh, the
I
voice.
wouldn't say I'm a healer. I would say that my energy is able to bring through their energy.
So you channel energy
I
or
channel energy, and I was once told that there's only a small percentage of people that are like, I'm seeing it now, they're showing it to me, those electrical, is it capacitors, or how they bring it in and then bring it to the level of energy to the households,
okay.
bringing in that energy and being able to distribute it in a way that can be useful is what they're telling me now.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
So did you have a particular client that you were working with that where
To
this
start with, the word got out pretty fast amongst other healers.
Mhm.
And so probably, I don't know, 80 to 90% of my clients were other healers who
Interesting.
wanted their energy fresh, I suppose. So, or other spiritual people. I remember this guy coming to me from Cairns, and I was in awe of him because he was the most amazing channeler. But at the time, he said to me that I was the only one he'd found that was able to balance his energies and clear. And when I say me, it wasn't me. It was the spirit team
Right.
that chose to work with me.
So you've studied under some amazing spiritual mentors yourself, such as Dolores Cannon. What was the biggest lesson that you learned from her?
It's interesting because she was coming to Sydney, and I just knew I had to go there, that she probably wasn't coming back. So I just booked myself, and in a very fast way, I learned the first level so that I could attend her more advanced training. It just so happened that we were staying obviously at the same hotel where she was training, but every morning I went to breakfast, she would be seated there just off from me. And one particular morning, she had this guy come to her, and he's talking to her while she's having her breakfast. And I'm, only a few seats away. And I heard her say to him, "Have you had your breakfast this morning?" And he said, "Oh, yes, I have, thanks." And she said, "Well, I'm having mine and I need you to leave." And I was just like, wow. I loved that. And I loved Dolores Cannon. She was in her power. She set boundaries. She knew her stuff. She was a very kind lady, a very strong lady, but she just taught me in that moment that it's okay to set boundaries and other people need to respect that. So her work, yes, is incredible. And I was so pleased that I went. But also in that moment, just learning from her.
Absolutely. So do you have any other mentors that you have worked with?
I think she was probably the most standout person. Mostly my mentors have been my spirit team. They're the ones that I've learned from. I had no idea about anything when I started. I didn't even understand about protections or anything. So I just decided that I would just say to them, look, can you always make sure that I'm protected, and just automatically upgrade that protection when I need it? And that was it. And I saw some pretty heavy duty clients who, had a lot of stuff on them. So I just think that my relationship with my spirit team is so from the heart with each other, and it's such a strong connection, and I just trust and love them so much that I just think I'm looked after in that way. I really do think that we're here to develop our gifts and live a life expansively, and yes, we can learn from others, definitely, and it might just be one thing that we get from them that makes that improvement. And I'm just hearing the word synchronicity, so they're saying, and they're putting your space, in divine timing so that you will learn and accept that information. Oh, that's a choice, isn't it? Whether you accept the information.
I have this little book coming out about signs and synchronicities.
Oh, do
So
you?
it's called Signs and Synchronicities, Proof That We're Always Supported, Especially in Our Grief. And I'd love to hear your take on that.
I always just trust spirit, even like I said, if it doesn't make sense. My husband has learned to just trust asked it, I have a number of stories. But one I will point out about signs and synchronicities is one day, many years ago, my husband and I went to Port Arthur in Tasmania. Now, some people may be aware of that. It was a penal colony, and we actually supposedly had a terrible shooting episode there. But we went after all of that, and we decided that we would do the ghost tour at night. And so you go there, and because it was a penal colony, there are no lights. It's complete darkness. So what you do is you go on these paths in complete darkness with a lantern, and they try to spook you with it, but it didn't spook me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. But it was so peaceful, I thought. But at the beginning, the tour guide, all these people are standing around, and my husband and I were standing right at the back, and they're explaining what's going to happen. And I'm not very tall. I'm 5'3.5", and my husband is 6 foot. And the tour guide chose me to carry the lantern. And I remember saying to my husband later on after the tour driving home, don't you think it's weird that I got chosen to hold the lantern? And he said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'm right at the back of everyone. How did he even see me? Why didn't he choose you? So a few days later, I was chatting to Spirit, and Spirit said, remember how you were chosen to carry the lantern? And I said, yes. And they said, you were chosen because in your work, you are a guiding light for many others. But they wanted me to also explain to people that sometimes, yes, you feel like you're going through life in darkness, that you've got no idea where to go to next, probably like you talk about in grief, where you really do feel quite dark and alone. What they said was that your guideposts are actually what lights you up. So what let's say something inspires you, something makes you laugh, something makes you feel good. That's actually your guideposts in your life when you feel like you've got no idea where to go to next. And they were just explaining to me how we sort of think, maybe we are lost, or nothing's working out for us, etc. But if you shift your focus on things that light you up, that's your soul's urging. That's your soul's signpost that this is the direction that you need to. And also they're saying, and to trust that that's the direction that you need to head towards. And it's interesting because they are the sort of things that they would do for me. Something would happen in life, and then days later, sometimes weeks or months later, they'll say something like, remember how you were chosen to carry the lantern? And then they'll give me a little story around it, and they'll help me explain how to help others with that information. So, quite simply, when you talk about signs, if something just lights you up, that's a pretty damn good sign that is the direction that you should steer yourself toward.
That's great advice. But I'm thinking about the theme to our talk, which is how to follow your soul's urging, even when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So can you give us an example of what that would look like? Or somebody that that's done that?
I can give you an example. About a year ago, my husband and I decided we were going to buy a boat. We bought a house on the water, and we thought it would be great to have a boat in our backyard that we could go out on. And we wanted a boat that was, with a kitchen and everything, so we could really enjoy our time on the boat. And my husband is a boatie, and he'd narrowed down this particular style of boat. The only place that they were for sale had been, in his research, had all been interstate, so many hours away. Anyway, we decided we were ready for a boat. So he looked up boat sales, and lo and behold, there's the exact boat that we wanted 10 minutes drive away. So we went and had a look at it. When I sat on it, it just felt right. It just felt luxurious. It felt beautiful. I could feel myself there. So we're driving home, and my husband said to me, I don't think we should buy it. And I said, why? And he said, I just think it's too much money. Then we get in our head. So we start talking about how it's too much money. We shouldn't be spending that sort of money, blah, 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 blah. So he rang the guy up when he got home and said, look, we've decided we won't take it. But something wouldn't let me let it go. So, this is what I mean. When something feels right, when it makes your heart sing, and really, what are you saying to yourself? You're not worthy of having that. Like, you shouldn't be spending that money on yourself. You shouldn't be enjoying something like that. So I kind of still sat with it within me. The next morning, my husband gets up early and I decide to have a conversation with Spirit. It's like 7 a.m. and I'm lying in bed and they said, make an offer on this particular, they gave me the price to make the offer.
That's amazing.
So I got out of bed and I said to my husband, right, this is what's happening. And he just looked at me and I said, you're going to ring the guy back and you're going to offer him this price. He said, he will never accept that price. That's ridiculous. I said, well, Spirit told me to offer it and like, trust it, like just do it. Do it for me. Even if he says no or laughs at you, just do it. Follow through. See, that's the thing. We hear whispers from Spirit and we don't follow through. We've got to take action. We've got to trust them as well. We've got to know that they're for us. So he rang the guy and the guy said, well, look, my son and I are halves in the boat. I'll have a talk with him. So my husband said, look, don't get disappointed, blah, 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 blah. So off he goes. He had to go to the dump. So he goes to the dump. And on the drive home, about 20 minutes later, he rings me and he said, have you got like a wet weather jacket? And I said, I don't know. Why? And he said, because you're going to need it with your new boat.
Oh, wow.
And so we bought it at that price. So it's just totally trusting. You know, it was something that we really wanted. It felt good. We deserved to have it. We wanted to have it. So I asked Spirit for help. I asked for guidance. That's what they gave me. So we took action.
I love that story.
Yeah.
So what would be the message that you would give to people and how to trust their inner knowing or spirit or life at this point?
Well, I just think, you know, you've got to develop your relationship with Spirit, which is really your inner being. You're part of that beautiful energy. People can talk themselves out of it. If it feels good, to me, that's, you know, like Spirit said, that's the best sign you can have. If it's from the heart, it's when we start questioning whether we're worthy of having it, whether we should, what will other people think. I've done all sorts of things in my life just purely because it felt right. It didn't make sense, but that's the way that I have operated. So for advice, like get out of your head probably and into your heart. You know, where like I have a Facebook group called I Choose to Live a Life I Love. We're the creators of our life, and you can choose to surround yourself with people and with what you love, what lights you up. I really feel that what Spirit said all those years ago is so many more levels than the simplicity of just your following your heart and following, they've just written passion. So follow your passion and back yourself, because I think that's one of the biggest things is we don't back ourselves to have that awesome life, to have what we want, or we tell ourselves that we're not successful enough, or we're not good enough, or we're not special enough, or whatever else. Really, then we're saying that our essence isn't special, isn't good enough. And I believe we're here to have a joyful, loving, kind life. And that, yes, there will be experiences that aren't that, but it's all about learning from it and moving through that experience towards what it is that you do want. Because sometimes through the contrast of having an experience we don't want, we get stronger about what we do want. And I think one of the important things is to focus on what we do want. Because when we start looking at woe is me and everything that's going wrong or everything that's not perfect about ourselves, that's when our energy, you know, drops. That's not being true to our authentic selves. So the focus should, yes, look, we can all have times, you know, we're allowed to indulge ourselves with a bit of, oh, poor me, but don't stay there. Go, okay, what is it that I truly want? And I'm going to move in that direction. And it doesn't have to be set in concrete, because you may change that as you go along. But if you follow what your heart really, you know, sings to you, then I think that's the best thing that you can do, because that is your soul singing to you. That is the vibration of your soul.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Cheri. I think that's a great note to end on. If people are interested in learning more about your work or working with you, how can they find you and how can they work with you?
Well, I am on Facebook, and I do have that group, I Choose to Live a Life I Love, because I do think it gets down to a choice. We choose. It's our movie, so it's up to us to make the choices for ourselves. So there's that group book. You can reach out to me on Facebook.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Bye.